If you attend an event, you attend a seminar, and it's peachy the entire time. You're just casually sitting here and it's like, that's fun, you're giggling, you're laughing, right? That's great, but for something to truly change you, for something to truly hit at a core, it has to disturb you a little bit. Your comfort zone, your current way of thinking, your current way of being, your current way of acting has to be disrupted. This is you, where you're at here today. This is where you want to go. You succeeding, right? With the little crown. Just crushing it. This is you all sad right here. Okay? Bring some awareness to your current situation right now. What is this sad you? What are the patterns? What are the sticking points? Where's the blockage? Perhaps procrastination. Perhaps, it's a little too hard. I don't have the energy. All the limitations. And then more importantly, what is the gap? What's the gap? This is really your map of success. It starts there. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? Very few people know, right? You get sucked into self-help and it's like, this is great, right? You learn about all these productive things, yet very few people are clear on what their win actually is. They know what they don't want, but they don't know what they want, right? If things were to go amazingly well, what would that look like? Why are you here? Every single one of you is here for some reason. What is that? To get better. Okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, to be better than now. Okay, what is that? Well, to have a better life. Okay, what? To be like the people on YouTube. Okay, what is that? Be really clear. When it comes to your social life, your friendships, your relationships, what is winning? And don't write what necessarily you don't want. That's playing not to lose. Everyone knows what they don't want. What do you want? What's a situation where if it were to be real, right here, right now, you'd be like, yes. And you'd have that crown and you'd be smiling. And don't just answer more. People are like, oh, how much more success? Just more. Okay, well, how much exactly? What about your financial situation? Same thing. What about your health? What about your inner happiness, your fulfillment? What's that win? This here will also serve as your compass. And you should be filtering everything that you hear, everything that you learn through this win. Because what's productive, say, for you, might not be productive for you. There is no universal productive. That's like the magic pill, dumbed down, watered down self-help. It's like, hey, just hustle, just master your morning routine, just do this. And we think that if we just follow all this advice and include these little productive things in our day, we'll just magically make it. But very few people know what making it is. And if you don't know where you're going, you don't know what's productive for you. So really try to write down, what's that win? Where are you going? And then it's very simple. What's the gap? What are the steps you need to take to go from here, sad, pathetic you, to you winning with the crown? And the steps are very simple. They always are. If you actually sit down and spend a good hour or two reflecting on this, you'll know the exact steps. The content's out there. There's so much free content out there, you could easily, if you have half a brain, find the steps. It's the same with people trying to get in shape, right? Do you know how to get in shape? Yeah. Does anyone here not know how to get in shape? Yeah. All right? Okay, just go to the gym and eat healthy. Everyone knows that. The steps are so easy. Now, of course, you can then perfect it, right? If you're like, well, I then want, to bulk and lean bulk. Yeah, you can go extreme, sure. But just for the basics, it's the most simple thing in the world. And it's fascinating, too, that there are so many fitness coaches, right? For something so simple. It's like, don't eat the burger, eat the salad. Thank you. Right? It's really not hard. It's very simple, but there can be all that resistance to actually doing it. That's why there are those coaches. It's to get you to do those very simple tasks. So identify the steps. If you don't know the steps, that's your second sticking point. What's your win? What are the exact steps? Then question 3, what's blocking you from taking those steps? Because guaranteed, once you have the steps, you know exactly what to do. Your problem is, why am I not applying what I know I should be applying? Why am I not doing what I know I should be doing? So it starts there. What do you need to do? And then also, who do you need to become? You can't skip the process. You here with the results you want. What exactly is that you? What's different about that you? In terms of your actions, in terms of how you feel, in terms of how you think, in terms of how you operate. There's that classic saying, to get what you want in life, you have to deserve what you want in life. There is no skipping that process. You can try, and that's unfortunately another big trap where people try to cheat their way to success. And you can cheat your way there temporarily. You can fight against self-sabotage and try to, cut your learning curve and skip your learning curve, but eventually you'll find your way back to what you deserve. Self-sabotage will kick in, you will not be able to maintain it, and you will not be able to enjoy it. You want to succeed, you better deserve it. So reflect on that. What's that win? And then who are you in that win? And what's the gap between you and that win or you? Okay, it all starts there, and then filter everything through this. I always like jokingly comparing this to supplements. Anyone here take supplements, vitamins? Okay. So if you walk down the aisle, or say you go to supplement store, even Whole Foods, and you walk down the supplement aisle, take any supplement, any vitamin, and just look behind at the benefits. Is there a single one where you're like, yeah, I don't want that? Yes or no? No. Every single one, there are amazing benefits. You're like, reduces stress, helps you relax, vitamin D, good for inflammation, good for the heart, good for the brain. Like every single one, you're like, this is amazing. What happens if you start chugging all of them? Just like opening vitamin after vitamin, just what happens? It's not good. That's what we do with self-help. We're like, all this advice. Who doesn't want to be more productive in this thing and this thing? And the morning walk and it's like, and people just drown in all this productive self-help stuff. What's the right way to go about getting, say, supplements? Perhaps do a blood test. And then say, hey, you're deficient there. Change your diet, get a supplement. Your win, that's your compass. That's your blood test. Based upon that, you'll know exactly what type of content to consume and what to execute on. Otherwise, you don't know. Otherwise, you'll drown in supplements. You'll drown in self-help. Now, some of these steps, you'll be aware of them right now. You're like, okay, got to do this, this, this. Some might be a little blurry. And that's fine, that's normal. Some of those steps will only appear to you once you start walking the path. You take a few steps and suddenly, boop, step number 3, step number 4 appears. Okay, if you want an example of this, take a great exercise I'd highly suggest you all do is start a podcast. Even if you don't put it out publicly, do it for fun. You'll learn so much about yourself, especially if you're someone who wants to improve your social skills. Start a podcast and take it seriously, right? So have a nice setup, get a camera. If you don't have a camera, use your phone. Make sure it's video, not just audio, and sit down and just once a week for 1 hour, record an episode. It could be about whatever you want. But say you take that step. You'll record your episode and then you'll review it. You'll be like, okay, well, how was it? How did I do? Now what's going to happen is you're going to probably start looking up other podcasts and you're not going to see them the way you had previously seen them. It's not going to be this fun, entertaining thing. You're going to be filtering it through your experience doing your own. And you're going to pick up on subtleties you had previously not even picked up on, right? Say you're looking at your own and you're like, oh, it's a little rusty there. Oh, I got a little too serious. How can I inject some humor? Now you're going to be looking at another one and be like, oh, that's how they deal with that. Oh, look at that transition. That's how they transition. That was fun. Oh, they injected humor there. Oh, how did they do that? Oh, how did they shift? Interesting. You're going to pick up on all these subtleties. But to pick up on them, for your focus, your RAS to activate, you need to take one step in action. You need to start doing it yourself. Same here. You start taking steps, and suddenly new ones that you can't figure out yet will start appearing. And this is also why people will just stay stuck trying to guess the entire way before taking action. Waiting for all your ducks to be in a row will forever stay stuck. You'll never figure out those future steps unless you start walking. It's like an invisible bridge. You see like 2 steps, and you're like, here we go. And then they just start magically appearing. If you're just waiting for them all to appear, you'll wait forever. Okay? That podcast exercise, by the way, so key. You'll see so much about your charisma, your delivery. It will also start training your focus, your RAS, on a day-to-day basis to start looking for, okay, what am I going to talk about next week? What happened to me? What's interesting this week? What are some interesting things I heard, I've seen, I've witnessed, I've done, I've experienced? What are some funny things? Things in conversations with friends, coworkers, are like, oh, that's a good one. Let me make a note for the podcast. Your goal is every single week, how are you going to fill an hour of content that is captivating the entire way through? And don't let yourself off the hook. Don't make it boring. Ask yourself, would you watch this if it was on YouTube? If you stumbled on that video, would you be locked in? Or at what point would you fall off? And you can audit that. Okay? This here, in terms of public speaking, recording videos, traveling around the world, teaching like this, doing live events, helped me tremendously. Okay? Going out and socializing and speaking, there was a beautiful synergy that happened between the two. With this whole lockdown situation, what did I do this past year? A lot of lives. If you haven't watched them, go check out my YouTube lives. And you'll see it's the exact same thing. Every week, I'm like, okay, how am I going to fill a live? Right? How am I going to talk for like 45 minutes or so? Make it captivating. It's an amazing exercise. You learn so much. And then it's finding that right balance too, if you are doing something that's educational, between teaching but mixing in fun. Because if you're too serious, what happens? If there's no fun at all, there's no charisma, you turn into a boring college professor that no one listens to. Right? Ever find it fascinating how you can just lock in here and actually pay attention versus school growing up? Right? Even think about this content, even just now, just how much deeper this is than a lot of what we are taught in school, and yet you're just locked in the entire time. Right? That's a balance of course, good content, making sure that it speaks to you, making sure that it's relatable, adding in charisma, right? Not just being monotone, not coming up and being like, so there's the gap, everyone, and there's some steps, and if you write down your steps, and another good exercise is a podcast. Okay, so make sure you write down the podcast, and just it's like a falling asleep audiobook type thing, right? So not monotone, charisma, but then also fun, right? Like notice that, even the laughter. Combine those three things, people lock in, people learn, people get results. You'll have to master that on your own. You're like, well, what's my humor? How are you going to inject that in the podcast? How are you going to learn to push your own buttons and make yourself laugh? And not just when it naturally comes about in your day. That's easy, right? Well, if something naturally funny happens, you're going to laugh. How can you do that on command? And not fake it, but like genuine laughter. Because people try to logically think, well, if I maybe say this, that might make me laugh. No, you should learn how to summon that, right? If you want another little side exercise to do this, try this, whether it's on the podcast if you like, or even in an interaction. Say you're even talking to a friend, guaranteed this little exercise, if you overdo it, it won't work, but first time you do it, will guaranteed summon genuine laughter. It'll even do it now. Here's the exercise. For 1 minute, at any point in that interaction, after every single thing that you say, you're going to do a very awkward little giggle. So imagine it's like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Julien. Like that. And just own it as if it's totally normal. It's like, oh, cool. So you're from Austin? Like the entire time. Now notice, that actually summons genuine laughter. Right? So that's one way, but you need to learn how to do that for you at any time, and especially in situations where there is nothing to really draw from in the environment, and it's a situation where there is even a little bit of pressure. Right? We call this healthy pressure. If you sit down and you do a podcast, trust me, it's going to be really awkward at first. You're going to, pull up your chair. You're going to be alone in your room, in your place. Have your little phone camera set up, sit down, and it's going to be silent. And you're like, well, here we go. Welcome to the podcast, right? And you're going to have to learn how to just talk and talk. There won't be any social feedback either. And that's really, really interesting. I remember even Eckhart Tolle, this is way back in the day when I first started learning how to, create videos, and I had so much trouble with this, by the way. For me to do a podcast back in the day, impossible. For me to even record a video blog took months. I almost actually didn't get hired/fired because I was so terrible at recording videos. Terrible. If I was interacting and there was feedback, yes. If it was a seminar like this, yes. Put a camera, I need the feedback. There's no feedback. And Eckhart Tolle actually talked about this too, where he's like, you got to actually look through the camera and visualize like the people you're talking to versus this inanimate object. But you'll see, it'll be awkward at first. And it will be very challenging, but you will grow tremendously from that. If you can summon genuine laughter in that awkward, quiet environment, with the camera, knowing that people are going to see it, even if you never posted, imagine you did, going out and just socializing becomes a joke. It really does. It teaches you so much, too, about yourself, state control, state management, right? Again, staying authentic, but not letting the external just get you all reactive or get you to clam up. That podcast exercise, genius. Once you're able to do 1 a week, 1 hour of really solid content, do 2 a week, do 3 a week, do 4 a week. That there, again, it's a bit on the extreme, but if you're someone who really wants to cultivate and you could say polish your personality and improve your social skills, what's an hour a day? Will you ever run out of things to say if you're able to do that? No. Right? You never will. And it always has to be fresh. You'll see when you deliver a story that isn't fresh, or a story that you've repeated a little too much, a story or a joke that you're trying to make perfect instead of just letting it flow out of you. And that too, that's the dance of socializing, right? It's having a certain intention, but at the same time letting go of that outcome, right? So it's like intention to do well, intention to succeed, intention to say something interesting. Same with the seminar here, by the way. I have a few notes that I'm looking at. I have an intention. There's something I want to talk about, but in the moment, if I'm like too perfectionist, like it has to be exactly like the notes, it'll stifle the soul of the speech. There has to be room for some improv, room for some joking around, room where you're just like, let's just let go a little bit. Let's see what happens. Same with your podcast. You're going to have to trust. I'm going to trust that something's just going to naturally come out and it's going to crush. And then you're going to start seeing it in others. Here's another thing you'll start noticing on a deeper layer. You're going to look at other podcasts and you're going to see when they're in a flow state, when they aren't. You're going to see when they struggle just like you. Most people don't see that. They just see the surface layer. This is funny. This is entertaining. I'm learning. Deeper layer, it's like, oh, that's interesting. Here's one where they're in state. Here's one where they're out of state. Here's one where you saw a dip in state, and then you can see them get back in state later on. What happened? What shifted? You should also even see this during live events here. Right? I like to think I'm a pretty, say, on top of my state, pretty genius type of guy state-wise, but I also have little dips. Right? Not all my events do I come up and I'm like, here we go, like super energetic. Like sometimes I'm like a little bit more chill. You're going to see waves even in this speech here, right? The flow that we're in now versus the beginning is a little different. And that too, funny enough, is what makes it captivating. If it's like this, even though this might be captivating the entire time, you'll get a little bit bored. Okay, so try the podcast exercise, see what happens. But once more, linking it back to this, take a few steps. What's the first step you can take now? When you take that step, what changes? Go back to the map. Now that I've taken step number 1, have some new steps appeared? Yes or no? Yes. Right? Then write those down. Take the next step and look for the new steps that appear, and that's how you succeed. It's very simple, but it's not necessarily easy to do. Now, put your ego aside when doing this too. This is huge. If I look back to my early days, okay, I started working on myself in 2006. That's over 15 years ago that I've been in this whole self-help world. Just think of how long you've been in, like imagine 15 years of that nonstop. Since 2006, I've been working on myself. Since 2010, I've been traveling around coaching people. Literally, traveling around the world every single week. I'm in a new country, new city, doing live events like this, huge crowds, right? I actually spoke in front of huge crowds at a very, very young age. Started coaching people of all backgrounds, all ages, all sticking points. Like I've seen it all. Like that's been my life. Just this one-dimensional self-help being where all I do is think about self-help, transformational work. I dream about it. I literally had a dream last night. I woke up and I'm like, where am I? And it's like, oh yes, I have a speech today. Like, it's crazy, okay? Most of the conversations I have are about self-help. The people I hang out with are about self-help. Like, that's me. But the one fortunate thing I had early on is that I didn't have an ego when it came to asking for help. And you can sense if you have an ego. Like right now, all of you, and this is massive respect for it, if you realize it, you're all here because you need help. You wouldn't be here otherwise. Now, if this stings your ego hearing it, you're like, well, not really. You know, I'm just kind of here for the fun of it. I'm just here to kind of see what's up. Then put that aside. Even though that might even be true. You might be like, you know what, I'm actually doing pretty well. And I'm just here to check out what's going on, right? I go to events like that too, and guess what? My ego will still say it too, right? I'll talk to people who are successful, even more successful than me, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to kind of see what they're about, you know? But I won't get the most value out of it that way. I purposely remind myself, no. Put that aside. How am I going to get the most out of this? Go in full-on, open, receptive student, give me the goods. Don't let your mind say, okay, here are the common ones, I already got it. I know it all. You'll even sense your mind doing this when hearing ideas here. You might have even seen like, here's the gap thing, and you're like, oh, I've seen that example before. This is a common one. And what does your mind do? Oh, I've seen it. I got the point there. And then you just kind of tune out, as opposed to fresh, new information, right? Oh, what's Julien trying to communicate with this podcast example? Oh, I get the point. Okay. Waiting for the new one. Waiting for the new one. No. Don't let your mind say, I get it. Even if you do, always come at these ideas with a pair of new eyes. You're a blank slate. You will pick up on subtleties you had previously missed out on. And here's the other thing. As you start going down this path, even watching old information, stuff you've heard before, seen before, you will understand it at a whole other level. Take the podcast example. You watch one episode without doing anything. Oh, that was fun. You start doing your own podcast, you come back to that episode, completely different experience. Same thing here. Oh, I already got it. I already saw that episode. Don't let your mind say that. The other one is, I can do it on my own. Right? I can figure it out. Don't let your mind say that too. If you could, you would have. Right? And this, again, I was very fortunate, because we're not all like this. I was, though. But when I started, I was like, I can't figure it out on my own. I realized, like, I was way too lazy, way too many excuses. I was way too scared. I just couldn't do it on my own. And I accepted that. I'm like, you know what? I'm not strong enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have what it takes. You can listen to as many little Instagram clips like, you have what it takes. You have the power. It's not going to change much, right? I would try telling myself that. I'm like, well, maybe I'll try some affirmations. Like, come on, you are strong. You are worthy. Still couldn't take action. And after all, I'm like, you know what? I just can't. But if you accept that, now you're dealing with facts. You're not in this state of denial. You're like, well, if I'm not strong enough and smart enough and I don't have what it takes, what can I do? Ask for help. Most people are so hooked on looking good for themselves, trying to impress their minds that they never get to the facts and they never ask for help. By the way, apply this too whenever you go into a coaching program, whenever you get a coach. One of the first things I tell my clients is, don't try to be cool in front of me. Don't try to impress me. Because if you do that, what happens? Do I actually see what's going on? No. I just see the front that you're putting on, and that's what we're working with. Versus, hey, this is who I am, here are the facts, here's what I deal with, here's what I struggle with, not going to pretend to be cool, here's me. Oh, great, now we can get to work. Don't do it in front of others, don't do it for yourself. Be honest with yourself. Honesty and awareness, step one to any kind of change. Another one is, I'm better than that. I'm above that. Right? I don't need to write that down, I'm above that. Right? I could see how it could help others, people below me, but not me. Process is a little different for me. Okay. There was one client I remember in Paris. He came to, this is a more VIP event, right? So again, there's multiple events, but this is one where, it's a very small group and people who join are just very serious. And he showed up and he's like, look, I spent over $100,000 the past year or so on different programs, on coaching, to really get to that next level. This is someone who was very successful financially, right? So he spent a lot of money. He's like, I just really want to get to the cause. Nothing truly worked. I'm really hoping that your coaching here, this is before we even start the event, right? He walks in the room. I'm really hoping that your coaching here will work, right? This is kind of like my last chance. I've really tried everything. I'm about to give up. I hope it works for someone like me because it's a little different for me, right? Like a lot of other people, they get all this success, but I'm a little different. It's a little harder for, information to get past my ego, so on and so forth. First thing I said is, that's why you're not getting results, because you think it's different for you. Oh, I see how it applies to others, but how does it apply to me? Right? And that voice was still there during the first half of the event. Even during the breaks, he'd come up, he's like, hey, Julien, so I got the advice you said for the others, right? The dumb ones. But give me the real goods. Like, for someone like me, right, who's done all those events, so how's it different? I'm like, it's the same. And that takes a sting, right? Some perspectives to sink into here is, can you be like everyone else? What if you aren't special? What if you aren't different? What if you're just like everyone else? Your ego's like, no, right? But if you actually accept that, now you surrendered the process. Now you surrendered the teachings. You're like, well, what would someone else do? Let me do that too. Ego aside. You're not above anything. And then the last thing your ego is going to say is the solution's just out of grasp, right? It's like, well, I got that, I get it that my results aren't really where I want them to be right now, but it's because I'm just missing that one little piece, right? It's like just a little bit more. It's like just out of arm's reach. That's where the solution is. And people stay stuck in that state forever. It is crazy. It's like, I'll figure it out on my own. I just need one more video. It'll be in the next course. It'll be in just there. It's like, no. Stay open, ask for help. Okay? Here's another one to trigger you. Actually say it out loud. Okay? Right now, what you're all going to say, repeat after me. And notice if there's any cringe. Any part of you that's like, I don't really mean it. Or if you can congruently say this. Repeat after me, I need help.
I need help.
Was it smooth? Do you take a little bit of hit? Repeat after me, I'm not smart enough to figure it out on my own.
I'm not smart enough to figure it out on my own.
I'm not strong enough to figure it out on my own.
I'm not strong enough to figure it out on my own.
Help me, Julien.
Help me, Julien.
Please help me, Julien.
Please help me, Julien.
I'll do anything, Julien. Obviously joking out that last one. But do notice, like even saying that out loud, it's like, help me, I need help. Like, no joke, for a lot of people, it's like, oh, you just feel a sting. Like you feel even dirty. Like, what am I doing? Why am I saying that I need help? Right? But that's where you can sense that resistance. If you're actually be like, hey, you know what? Help me. It's not a weakness to ask for help. Right? It's actually valuing your time and respecting yourself. And here's the other thing. This one, how to say it, Jordan Peterson talks about this. And again, think what you want of Jordan Peterson. I think he has some great ideas. And one of his sayings, and I'm paraphrasing, is, treat yourself as someone who you love, right? Someone you actually care about. Right now, if there was someone you cared about who had a problem, you would have no ego to ask for help. But with you, oh, I don't really need it. I can suffer a little longer because it's me. Right? This here was really also shoved in my face, and I've done a lot of inner work, right? No one's perfect. I'm not perfect either. But I had a kid, a child, a daughter, right? A year ago. And when I had a daughter, it really does show you, like, you would do anything, like go above and beyond to keep her safe, to help that person. Above and beyond. It also shows you, like, you don't have the luxury to engage in dumb stuff, right? To put things off, to come up with little excuses. Suddenly, all of your focus is, like, let's do everything we can because it's the most important person in your life, right? Boundaries are strong, priorities are strong, and you can even play this mental perspective. You don't necessarily even have to have a kid to realize this. Imagine you had a kid right now. What would change? Literally. Audit all your habits, your thoughts, the things you engage in, right? Maybe you're someone who just goes home, and again, this is sadly the reality of most people. They go through the 9 to 5, go home, and they're already beat by this job they hate, and then they need to numb themselves with drinking, music, movies, video games, weed, and then they pass out. Would you do all that if someone actually depended on you, who you really cared about? No. Well, guess who depends on you? You. Why aren't you that important? Right? If your kid was sick, would you be like, yeah, I'll figure it out on my own. We're above that. No. Right? I don't really feel like working today. Hey, someone depends on you. You can also audit how you talk to yourself. If you wouldn't say it to your kid, don't say it to you. Notice all the self-abuse internally, the self-attack, right? Come on, make yourself do it. You're so pathetic. Da, 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 da. Right? Hey, would you say that to someone you cared about? So why are you doing it to you? Like, well, it's just me. It doesn't matter. Right? It's crazy how, again, when it's someone who you truly care about, for a lot of people too, it can even be a pet. No joke. Like, I also have a dog. Like, say you have a dog, it's like you would just go above and beyond just to help and protect that creature because you care about it. What about you? Right? So it's not a weakness to ask for help. If you truly care about yourself, get clear on your priorities, have really strong boundaries. This is another big one. Like, if anything isn't moving you towards this, be okay to say no. And the hardest thing to say no to are other opportunities. This is big. As you move up along the way, more opportunities are going to be there. And they might sound very enticing, and you're like, yes. But if it's not aligned with your win, it will simply distract you off the path. That's more of an intermediate problem. I've seen this more with like people who have already achieved a certain amount of success. But that's a big one. It's like, now I have all these people who now want to do this with me, and they're offering me this, and I'm saying yes, and now I don't have time, and I've kind of put my own dream on hold, and I'm doing these side things that I thought would be all engaging and exciting, and they aren't. Be okay to say no. Right? And this is once more where your compass comes into play. Filter everything through that. Okay? There are things that I say no to, where no joke, like, gun to the head right now, if you tell me, Julien, 10x your income. Could I do it within a year? I think I could. But it would take away from a lot of things that are in my ideal life. I'd have to say no to a lot of things that I actually do value to do that. So it's like, yeah, you could, but you'd have to sacrifice this. And that's what people do. It's like you start progressing and then you start selling out. And this is also why it's important to have that king you, queen you, winner you, that's authentic to you. Not what's authentic to someone else, not what's going to impress someone else, what you truly want. Because when you're on your deathbed and you look back at your life, trust me, if you're like, well, I impressed a lot of people, that is nothing. You're like, well, I achieved a really successful life that impressed others, that is terrible. Okay, and I see this a lot actually with, once more, successful clients. I would see it a bit back in the day, right? Teaching social skills, you'll get a whole array of clients, right? But as I started shifting more towards transformational work, especially inner work, right? Removing self-sabotage, limiting beliefs, it's actually attracted a lot more wealthier and just really well off on the external side of things in terms of clients. Like a lot of really successful entrepreneurs. One that Owen and I coached passed away recently. It was really sad. But you know, what you see, and this is what was baffling to me, is that you create this crazy life on the outside, right? And maybe one of you or two of you in this crowd are like that. You just hustle it out, you fight against a lot of self-sabotage, you sacrifice a lot, and you create like the dream life on the outside, right? More money than you need. And on the inside, you just feel terrible. And you're like, was this all worth it? It is crazy, right? It's like you think, it's like, look at that person, they're so happy, they're so rich. More often than not, those rich people on the outside are just internally a bum. Internally, a sad homeless person covered in fancy trinkets. It's like a dirty bum wearing a Gucci shirt, right? A dirty bum on a yacht. A dirty bum showering in money. But they just hate it and hate themselves inside, and nothing truly changed. And it actually makes it worse, because then you're like, well, at least at the bottom you have your excuses, right? A bum at the bottom is like, I'm not happy, life's, kind of pointless, but it's because I don't have all the success. I don't have all the trinkets. And that's actually very comforting. No joke. To have that excuse is so comforting. It makes you feel so good about yourself. Guaranteed a lot of you here have that. You're like, I don't feel too fulfilled, but it's because I don't have the success yet. That's why I'm working on it. What if you get the success and you still feel that way? Now that excuse is gone. You can't blame something outside of you anymore because you have it all. I went through that, right? I was, no joke, catapulted into success at a very young age, right? I did my first huge launch at the age of 25. And I had more money than I could spend. More money than I should even have at that time. I also had more validation than I should have. I had more abundance in terms of friendships, relationships, travel. Literally had it all and felt terrible inside. And then you start asking yourself, there's something wrong with me, right? Another key Eckhart Tolle saying is, two things won't make you happy. One is not having what you want. The other is actually getting what you want. And you're like, it didn't work. And you go insane, right? So that's one thing I really see in a lot of those more successful clients is like, you're just like, it didn't work, what's going on? And they don't even enjoy the results, right? It's one, it tends to not be authentic to them. It's authentic to some kind of void, right? Some kind of inner wound, some hurt. That's usually what motivates a lot of people to take action. It's like you feel so terrible inside, you're like, no, I'm not gonna just sit here in misery, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna fucking do it, right? And you actually do, but it's all in a reaction to that hurt. So the hurt actually stays. The hurt actually amplifies. You become even more attached to it because everything that you're doing is coming from that place. You're investing in it, right? And then you're like, it's not authentic to me, it's authentic to the hurt. No. Now, does that mean don't chase success? Of course not. Right? And that's another big limiting belief on the more inner work, spiritual side of things is people are like, well, give up material success. It's all about what's on the inside. No. What you'll find is become rich on the inside and on the outside. And oftentimes, if you're truly rich on the inside, there will be that congruency between what's in here and what's out there. Anyone who tells you, like, give that all up, screw that person. Anyone who says it's all about the outer, nope. Anyone who says it's all about the inner, nope. 1 foot in each. And then what people find is when you start doing the inner work, you actually start enjoying those results. You stop chasing phantoms, right? If you're not enjoying the results you're getting, those are not results. What are you doing? Right? And that's what people do. They go, they achieve something, and then they're like, wasn't what I thought. Next thing, next thing, next thing. Chasing phantoms forever. And it also shows you what's authentic and what isn't. It also gets you aligned with being on your true path. And life actually becomes enjoyable. And here's the other big one. You shift motivational fuels away from self-hate, right? Taking action out of that wound, that inner hurt, to taking inspired action. Right? It's like the same as people who think you can only, protect yourself if you're in a state of fear. That's not true. You can also do it out of self-respect, out of self-love. You can protect yourself out of fear or out of love. That's your choice. You can take action out of hurt, out of scarcity, or out of love, out of abundance. Doesn't take away from the outer success. Now, once you get the steps, next thing to do is to put on training wheels. Okay? So what does this mean? You could have it all mapped out. You can even take some action, but trust me, between this and that, there's going to be a lot of inner resistance and a lot of self-sabotage. Okay? And this is something you can work on. It's something you can actually easily let go of with the right tools, but don't just trust that you're going to be naturally inspired the entire way. You will need training wheels at first to get the ball rolling. You can guess what those 2 training wheels are.
Accountability.
One is accountability. The other, support. Those 2 things are crucial. I wouldn't be here without them. What is accountability? That's more of the harsh approach to it. All right, it's like putting yourself in situations where you don't have a choice. Right? It's that old, take your cap, throw it over the fence. Now you have to go over the fence. Right? Putting yourself in situations where success is inevitable, where there are consequences to you not succeeding that are worse than you doing the work. Right? If it's uncomfortable to take action in this direction, and suddenly you're like, well, if you stay, it's even worse, you're going to take action. Okay? But that's not enough. And unfortunately, that's a lot of self-help. It's a lot of, do it, right? We'll hold you accountable. Don't be a loser. Are you a loser? It's like that whole approach. And that can be motivating for some. There are definitely some people who resonate with that. But what I found is if you balance this with the support being, you got this, right? Just having someone who cares about you and your well-being. Very few people have that. Right? Someone who's actually involved, and it's like, hey, you know what? I care about your success. Like, who in your life really does? Do your friends really care about your success? No. Secretly, they probably don't even want you to succeed because that'll make them feel worse about themselves. Right? It's like, if you start succeeding, it's like, well, that means I could be succeeding too. What? No, stay down here. Here's the PlayStation. Go to the PlayStation. Right? So they won't necessarily support you. They might say, like, yeah, you got this, but they don't truly mean it. For a lot of people in this journey, and I can definitely resonate, you feel very alone. That's also one of the big benefits of an event like this is you get to network with like-minded people, and you're like, wow, I am not alone. Real fast.
Yeah. What is the best form of accountability that you would say?
Getting to it.
Okay.
Right? It's like an accountability. It's coming. But it's a good question. It means you're focused. Okay? 2 forms, actually. Accountability, you can boil it down to people and money. Those are the 2 things that create accountability. People is the one that I personally relied on when I first started out because I was just broke, right? For real. I was just broke. Who's in that situation? Just own it. Raise your hand. You're just broke. You just don't have enough, right? Great. So for you, people. The example I always give is when I first started working on my social skills. I was so shy, by the way. This is 2006, flashback to Switzerland. I couldn't even ask someone for the time. If I was at a restaurant and I wanted more water, I'd be too scared to call over the waiter or waitress for water. I would have anxiety around family gatherings. I'd have anxiety over having dinner with my family. It's like, dinner time's coming, no. Like, that's how bad it was. And I did try. I tried to use all the willpower I had. I would walk out in the street. I'm like, today I'm going to ask someone for the time. Come on, Julien, you can do it. And I would just walk around for 2-3 hours, sometimes even longer, go home being way too scared to take action. And that feeling of defeat, by the way, stings like no other. There were multiple times where I'd go home and just, no joke, cry in my pillow. I'm like, why can't I just even do that? Why is it so hard? And literally it was months of this. I was persistent. I was not going to give up though, but it was just terrible. And after a while, I'm like, what did I say? Too weak, don't have what it takes. So let me involve people. And I found other people who were working on their social skills, and I went out with them. And now what happened? Although, yeah, it was perhaps scary to ask someone for the time, I also didn't want to look like an idiot in front of those other people. And that was a little scarier now. I'm like, well, these other people, I want them to think I'm cool, you know? I'd really like them to go out with me again. I don't want to go alone again, so I better just do it. Accountability. I really cared about what they thought of me more than what a stranger thought of me. The seesaw tipped, and I took action. Do that. You know who else holds me accountable nowadays? You. Right? Whenever I launch a digital course, for example, I always announce the date it'll come out before it's even finished. Sometimes before it's even recorded. Why? Now I have no choice. Right? That very first course I was talking about that I launched, this is 2014. I launched that date out, I'm like, it's coming out. It was like Valentine's Day 2014. Like 6 months, if not longer before, I'm like, that'll be the day it's coming out. And I would announce it, it'd be in all the videos. I'd do all these posts and like, hey, it'll be coming out Valentine's Day. What happens if it doesn't? I'll look like a fool. It's like, hey, where is it? You said Valentine's Day, right? That there held me accountable. I'm like, I cannot look like a fool in front of my entire audience if this doesn't come out. I've been promising my entire audience, this will come out on Valentine's Day and it's going to be amazing. Accountability. Same with team members. Same with friends. Use people, okay? Those training wheels, you don't want to necessarily, like at first you will depend on them more. You don't, in the long run, want that to be your foundation, but you do want to still sprinkle that in. Right now, for the most part, I don't really need that much accountability, but I still use it at times. Okay? So, people is one. The other one is money. Example I've given for years, whatever it is you're putting off right now, imagine you gave $1,000 to your friend and told your friend, if I don't do it, you keep the money. Like say, even me, right? Too scared to ask for the time. Say I gave a friend $1,000, I'm like, if I don't ask for the time today, you keep that money. Am I gonna ask for the time? Yeah, it's like, and it's crazy, right? Like, this also helps us save so much of that willpower that we use battling ourselves, because once you've done it, you just don't have a choice, right? We were talking about, say, fitness before. That is actually a big reason why it can be quite smart to get a fitness trainer. It's not so much that you're gonna learn a ton from the how-to, right? Even if you get a trainer, you'll learn the workout routines very fast. You could technically do it on your own. But you pay that person to free up all that willpower that you would have used on it otherwise. So you pay the trainer, and now it's like, oh, I got to do it. No willpower required. The accountability makes me do it. And then you can save that willpower for something else. So that's the accountability side. And then the support side is find people who believe in you. I've seen this a lot, even online. Okay, I have a private mentoring group, and someone will make a post, for example, where there's an exercise or a challenge that they must do, and they're scared. And they're like, hey, I'm really having trouble with this challenge. It's really scary. And yes, there's the massive accountability, but sometimes even just a comment from another client in that group saying, hey, you got this, or hey, it was scary for me too, but you can do it, gets them to do it. Crazy. No one there even in person. A comment from someone they don't even know online. You got this. Key saying, and it's kind of cheesy but true, sometimes all it takes is just one person to believe in you. That's it. Funny enough, that's also what happens. Say, if you have a kid, it's like someone does believe in you and depend on you. So empowering. Say there's that time where you're really struggling, feels like you're in it alone, and you just get a text like, you got this. Someone who truly cares. This can't be a fake one, like, hey, you got this, but they don't really care. Someone's like, yeah, I believe in you. You got this. You can do it. Even just a reminder, right? I'll sometimes text this to friends too. In the morning, like, hey, just so you know, man, you got this. Super cheesy, but trust me, if you get that every now and then, it'll change the course of your day, change the course of your life. Okay, so add those training wheels to everything that you do. If you're not taking enough action right now, how can I involve more money, more people, and how can I get support? And there's no excuse not to find this. Okay? You can find, for example, even if you're broke at the bottom, people to hold you accountable and people to support you. Might not be the highest quality people, don't necessarily learn from them, but you can use the accountability and support. Real fast.
We're all on 6th Street and walking around making excuses, not having any accountability system or anything. We want that little practical application.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's also important to network in a crowd like this, right?
Like,
if you're just going...
We're all out there and
Yeah.
groups of 2 and 3 walking around not doing anything.
Well, that can happen too. Well, no, for real. So that's actually a great point, right? So yes, you have an accountability partner and you're still not taking action, then it might not be enough for you. And this is important when it comes to your self-audit. It's at what point is there that tipping point, that seesaw? Because for some people, trust me, and this will also happen, say, with wealthy clients, is they'll need to pay a certain sum to even care. Like for them, paying even just a few thousand for coaching isn't enough. Like, say all of you right now, I'm like, just give me a penny. Are you going to do the thing? You're like, nah, you can keep the penny, right? It's not enough pain. Maybe one person holding you accountable, maybe a group of people holding you accountable isn't enough. Maybe in your mind, no one here would hold you accountable. There are some people where the only people who will hold them accountable are people they really look up to. There's some people, for example, and that might be you, and that's like, should fire something up, is like, get someone where you really care about their opinion. That's what I tell my clients, is like, hey, you joined this coaching, don't disappoint me. Would any of you here want to disappoint me? Like say, again, there's like live Zoom calls, and I'm like checking in on you. It's like, so, do you do it? Are any of you going to be like, well, no, right? Say you're like trying to take action. You're like, well, tomorrow I'm going to have to check in with Julien, right? You're going to take action. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to just be me, but like, who do I really care about? And do I care more about that than not taking action? At what sum does the seesaw tip? Might be 10 bucks, might be $100, might be a few thousand, might be more than that. Okay? I have clients, no joke, who pay $25,000, $50,000 just for a few one-on-one calls. That's it. Now, logically looking at that, you're like, a one-on-one call for like $50,000, but like there's YouTube, right? And that's what people fail. It's not about the information. Even an event like this, the information's great, but that's not why you join a coaching. All the information's on YouTube, for real. And that's also why so many creators and coaches are just pumping out all this information, because they know, yeah, most people aren't going to do anything with this. Right? The same, no joke, even if you like jump on a coaching call, it's like you might even hear some of the same information you see on YouTube. But because, say for that client, they're like 50K, a few one-on-one, are they going to lock in? Like imagine right now, no joke, play this mental game with yourself. Say you paid 50K just for this, just for the next 2 minutes. So it didn't even start yet. The next 2 minutes, you just paid 50,000 for. If you don't have 50,000, you're now in debt. So take whatever's in your bank account and imagine you're now minus 50K, and it's gone. And it's not even for one-on-ones. It's like 2 minutes of content starting now. What's going to happen in terms of your experience here? You're probably going to pay more attention than anything you've ever paid attention to in your entire life. Say I just give you one little tip. Say the whole tip is, do the podcast exercise. Done. Your 50K is gone just for that. Are you going to do that exercise? Is anyone going to be like, yeah, no. You are going to do that exercise. Also, things where your mind might be like, as we talked about, I get it. Are you going to let your mind say that if there's 50K gone? No choice? No. It will create massive receptivity. You will pay attention and you will take action on it. It eliminates any kind of excuses, any kind of procrastination. That's why they do it. And you don't need a ton of time either. No joke, just a few one-on-ones. And again, I'm not saying this like, all of you should pay 50K, right? It's like, no, that's, again, really VIP coaching. But just a few one-on-ones, because there's that receptivity, that accountability, that openness, they take action on it, and the result is more than if they got 100, 1,000,000 hours in digital courses. And that's also key. Don't confuse the content with the result. Right? A lot of people, even when they, look for a program to buy, they're like, well, how many hours of videos are in it? Doesn't matter. Does it? If you think it does, you're confusing the content with the result. A lot of people just want to be entertained too. Oh, how, this is like a new Game of Thrones season, but self-help. The more episodes, the better, right? No. It's like the content's great, but that's meant to be applied to your life, and the result's really your life. And this is also where you can audit, and this is the self-help junkie trap. If you're someone who's been in this for a while, chances are you probably watched a lot of content. Chances are you probably know more self-help than most people. Chances are, even at an event like this, there might only be a few little things you hear where you're like, whoa, I never heard that before. But in terms of seeing if you're truly succeeding, look at your life. Don't look at what you know. Look at your life. From the time you found out about personal development till now, are you getting the results you want? Is that the lifestyle you want? Is that the life you want? Did anything truly change, or do you simply know a lot? And that's the difference between learning about your problems or solving your problems. We love learning about them. A lot of clients come to me like that too. They're like, Julien, I know everything about my problem. I know that, for example, I have social anxiety, and I know where it came from, and I know the experience that sparked it up, and I know it affects my life, and I know it's at the cause, and da-da-da-da-da, but they still have the problem. I'm like, cool, you know more than you even should know. You don't even need to know that much about your problem to solve it, right? And that's self-help. It's like we go down this rabbit hole of just learning and learning and learning, not necessarily solving, okay? So do keep that in mind. Audit here, and this is why it's so important, like progress is your life, not how much you learn. I can also say that probably a lot of you here watch and consume more self-help than me. Even as someone who's obsessed, like this one-dimensional being of just self-help, 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 transformational work, I have clients who they're like, I watch multiple episodes and learning podcasts per day. Everything I do is productive. I'm like, why are you taking in so much content? Are you applying it? No, but I feel like once I reach, the 10,000 hour of content consumption, things will change. No. Right? If you just get a little bit, but you take action on it, and there's the depth, way more valuable than a lot that you just take in at a surface level. Right? Like speed reading. You could read 1,000,000 books. If you don't apply it or take the time to internalize it, nothing will truly change. I'd rather have just one chapter that I read on repeat and take action on it than 1,000,000 books that I just surface read. And funny enough, back in the day, you could say there's pros and cons. Right now there's YouTube, there's so much content out there, there's podcasts, there's audiobooks, there's everything. Back in the day, there wasn't all that, right? Like, just curious here, who here did find out about this whole self-help world like 10, 15 years ago? Old school. Cool. Over 15 years. Cool. So you guys remember, like, there wasn't all this YouTube video. There was like forums, right? A lot of like written articles and stuff. That's what you could find. And then there might be like a few digital courses here and there, right? That's it. If you got one of those digital courses because there was nothing else, you would watch it on repeat because there's nothing else. That there, trust me, way more valuable than a ton. A lot of my initial progress was just watching 1 or 2 courses on repeat again and again and again and again, like 50 to 100 times. I'd watch it, I'd have the audio, and I would just live in that world and take action on it. Right? It's what I said. Then you take action, you go back to that same content. Right now, find the best of the best content, play it on repeat. You don't need the new flashy thing. That's also what the ego does. It's like good content is when it's super, super advanced. That's what your mind thinks. As we said, it's actually very simple, just not easy to do. And also do consider, when it comes to human psychology, that we love obsessing with what? Problems that we don't have. If you want to say, start working on your health, what's the first thing everyone does? Well, I first need to do all the research on the best equipment, and what's the best workout shorts and attire, and what shoes should I wear to work out, and what's the best protein powder? Let me go watch all these videos on protein powder. Is it vegan better? Is whey better? Which one? What brand? Da-da-da. It's like, hey, get to the gym. You can focus on that later. That's a problem you'll have later, right? But again, that's what we zone in on. That's the advanced. Like, I want the super advanced. It's like, get to that when you start applying the fundamentals. Until then, only watch the fundamentals and take action and add depth to the fundamentals. Okay? Any questions so far, by the way? Making sense? Cracking some? Your comfort zone open? Yes?
Yeah, so I have an alright support system. I definitely have friends who help me out. I realized, actually, in the middle of your talk, it's really hard for me to resonate with the support. Like, I'll hear it,
Yeah.
but I just don't want to enter. It's fucking weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fucking wondering why I'm not saying this to you. I feel really fucking weird.
Well, that there will have to do a lot in terms of letting go and finding support from people where it does enter, where it does land. Because that's the thing too, if you don't value your friends that much, you're not going to value their support that much. Same thing as like his question there. If you don't value their opinion that much, accountability is not going to matter. Find people where it's like you truly care about, where it means an impact, right? Going back to that 50K thing, same there. If I text one of those clients, I'm like, hey, you got this. You paid 50K, you look up. Is that going to motivate you? Or are you going to let that land? Yeah. Right? So it's really learning about yourself, your psychology. It's like what cracks it open, what gets you to do it, and then jumping in. And then also sitting down, and the same with your win, and asking yourself, how important is this to you? Same with your own internal happiness, your own well-being. How important is that? Right? A question I'll get sometimes when it comes to, say, inner work or letting go, is someone will ask me, how do you let go if you're like, you're out in public and you get really triggered and you can't really sit down and, meditate? I'm like, who says you can't? Why not just go to the bathroom and do it? They're like, oh, but wouldn't it look weird? It's like, so what? Do you value your own well-being more than what people think of you? Or someone's like, I'm walking down the street and it's like, well, sit on the sidewalk and do it. Well, what if people stare? Does it matter? And that's the thing too. It's like, with your win, that shows you what is important in terms of productivity and priority. Right? Some people even here in like the 50K are probably like shocked, like, what, a 50K? I would never. It's like, well, it doesn't, it depends on how much you value your win. Those people there who paid that, who was super serious, they're like, that's where I'm going, that's the most important thing. Yeah, money's important. Be smart. Don't be dumb. Don't invest in something where it's like way above what you can afford. Of course not. Right? We're assuming here everyone has a proper functioning brain. But if you're just valuing like the money, the money, the money, the money over your win, you're doing it wrong. You're prioritizing the wrong thing. Your own well-being, that win, above anything. Above what people think, above your excuses. That comes first. And funny enough, it's when you start moving towards that too, you start really waking up in life. The life doesn't become this blur. If you want to know if you've been stagnating, ask yourself, how much do you remember of your year, the past couple years? Chances are it's like pretty blurry. There might be a few little instances that stand out. What about your life? The moments I really remember aren't the moments of consumption and distraction. It's the moments where you're moving there and you're stretching yourself. And you're encountering some of those challenges. For example, some of that inner resistance, and you take action. That stands out. That stands out more than, I've made it now. It's, look, I did it, going through that. Right? That stands out more than, oh, I got all this money now. It's like, no, you're moving towards what you know is authentic to you. You won't remember, like, oh, what people thought of you. Right? Oh, what if I meditate on the sidewalk? What are people going to think? You're not going to remember that. What you might remember, though, is that there's a time where you took care of yourself. You put yourself first. You honored yourself. Having boundaries, people think it's have boundaries with others. Yes, definitely. But have boundaries with yourself. Don't allow, like, your mind to lead you astray. Your mind's not you, it's a tool. Learn how to own your mind. Don't let it own you. And this is also why inner work is just so important. It frees the hold that it has on you. It frees the hold that your comfort zone has on you. You know? People think, and this is where they confuse it, they're like, I want to first succeed out there, and then I'll focus on the inside. Right? I fell into that trap. A lot of people do. First, outer success. Then when I'm in a good, comfortable situation, even financial situation, then I'll focus on the inner success. You're putting the cart before the horse. The inner comes first. And the inner, and again, this is how dumb we've all gotten, right? We think so in such binary ways. Doesn't mean you're not taking action. Okay, I'll be talking about this in another speaking slot. We're going to go really deep on letting go. But letting go is a very active process. It's not you just sitting at home, you know, meditating. Like, let me just sit at home. No, there's a ton of action involved. But the inside, that's the foundation. That's the starting point. Two games are being played. Outside in, inside out. Inside out is the way. Inside out is also how you eliminate so much unnecessary self-sabotage. Inside out is how you also learn about true success advice versus anti-self-sabotage advice. A lot of us, we create problems, and then we need advice to battle those self-imposed problems and limitations. That's not success. It's the whole what now mentality. I'm stifled, what now? I'm procrastinating, what now? Versus why am I stifled? Why am I procrastinating? Right? Imagine I start punching myself in the stomach. I'm like, well, how do I feel better? What now? Maybe some positive mindsets? Maybe some money would help? Maybe a good movie? Maybe some accountability? You're like, just stop punching yourself. And that, although it's funny, but it's also very sad, that's where we also burn so much of our willpower. We all have the same amount of willpower in a day. You can use it fighting yourself, or you can let go, come up from a foundation where there is no self-sabotage, you're not punching yourself, and dedicate it towards truly, you could say, crafting that ideal life and crafting greatness. Right now I'm using a ton of willpower. You know that? Am I using it to make myself not be nervous? No. Am I using it to be louder? No. What am I using it? To craft this content. There's a ton of willpower that goes involved, right? I have a few notes here, but this is also me really riffing. To craft this whole piece here, most people wouldn't be able to do it. Ton of willpower. It's like articulating words, making sure it makes sense, saying this piece of information first so I can then explain this one, because without that piece they wouldn't get this, and then linking this to that and going back to this and adding a joke here. Like, that's a lot of willpower. But it's creative willpower, creating, producing, versus, oh, there's a little nervous thought, willpower to stuff it down, stuff it down, stuff it down, don't be nervous, don't be nervous, don't be nervous. That's terrible. And that's the advice most people get. There's a million products and videos out there on how to stop self-sabotage, how to fight against it. Very few teach you how to get rid of it and how to truly succeed. You will not have the mental bandwidth or the willpower to really crush it if it's all spent backwards, fighting yourself versus forwards. There's backwards willpower, forwards willpower. Don't burn it all on unnecessary things. And you might seem like you're taking a lot of action, right? A lot of the hustlers in the self-help world, that's what they do. They rely on self-attack, they battle themselves to take action. And they think that they're doing more than most and it's really good and look at the struggle and what I'm overcoming. But that's dumb action, right? Going back to me punching myself in the stomach, imagine I'm doing this and I go through some heroic feat of like grabbing my hand and being like, no, you will stop. And I make videos and courses. I'm like, I will teach you how to grab your hand, and like it will be this insane battle, but you will stop punching yourself in the stomach. No, like that. It sounds glorious. And then I'll have my success story. I'll come up here on stage. I'm like, I used to punch myself in the stomach, and then I stopped. All right? And the struggle of grabbing that hand and fighting against it took everything in me. I documented it on Instagram, hustling another day, fighting against the hand. That's so much of the advice versus just don't. Right? You would look at me if I did that, and I was talking about the hand like I was the biggest idiot ever. You're like, okay, that sounds glorious, but why? That's dumb work. Sure, it's a lot of work, but it's so dumb. Right? Instead of like going straight line, you're zigzagging around. Same thing. Look at all the miles I ran. You're like, yeah, but just go straight. That's why I view, no joke, and this is, once you arrive at this paradigm, and again, a lot of inner work's involved, you start looking at general self-help like, it can actually be a little depressing. And I'm not going to lie, I went through a little bit of that sad phase last year, just kind of looking at the industry and being like, what is this? Like, it's truly disgusting. You know, it's like most people, this is the sad view, most people just come at this for entertainment. Most people will truly never change. Even you here, probably 80% of you won't do much with this. But at least you'll have a few chuckles, right? At least there's that. But it's really sad to see. And I'm saying this because I've seen over the years, right? Again, I've been coaching since 2010. I've seen the people who make it, the people who don't. I've seen what sticks. Like there's some advice where right now it might sound really great and you'll get a temporary result, but then a few years down you lose it. I've seen that. Most people don't, because that too, now in the self-help day, at this day and age, like everyone and their mom's a self-help coach, right? It's like, I read a book, I read Tony Robbins, now I'm a coach. I've had 2 clients, I've had 10 clients. Even like, I've had 100 clients. That's it? That's it? How are you a coach? Like, do you know what truly works? Do you know how it impacted those clients in the long term? Do you know how it impacted them 10 years later? If you don't know, you don't know what to tell them. You don't know what the right advice is. Right? So it's very sad. You see that. You see people who don't take action, entertained, and then a lot of it is just really toxic, self-attack, anti-self-sabotage advice. Now, it is better than nothing. I will say that. That's where I kind of find comfort. I'm like, well, if you're punching yourself in the stomach, it's better to fight that hand than to just take it. Right? Most people, they're at the bottom like, nothing I can do. That's life. Let's drink. So at least you're fighting it. But don't stop there. Just stop punching yourself. And don't find any pride in it. All right? If any of you, for example, and I always make fun of this poor man. I think he's a great teacher and has amazing advice, but David Goggins, he is the king of every single day I will fight this hand and stop punching myself. I will never miss a single day because otherwise the hand will punch me. Right? Now again, he has amazing advice in that paradigm. For someone who's punching themselves, honestly, some of the best to fight that hand. It's the best of the best. Changed tons of lives, and I love what he teaches. But don't stop there. Once you go down that path of like fighting the hand and you gain a little space, learn to let go of it. Don't think that's the end result. And that's what people do. And that's the typical self-help junkie. That's the hustler, always self-attacking. Right? If you go on Instagram and look up hustlers, there's a lot less now actually, but back in the day it looked like the most depressed people ever. It's like, did I just scroll on the hashtag depression suicide? What's going on? Literally, everyone's trying to look as more miserable than the other. They take pride in it. It's like, I only slept 3 hours. Cut into your sleep. Right? And you see them really sad. You see them get really bitter. You usually see them get really unhealthy. And then they just justify all that with, well, at least I'm fighting the hand. At least there's the money. There's that. And they turn into what we talked about before, a bum covered in trinkets. Right? Take away all that money, and you look at the person or the soul of that person. Is that someone you'd want to hang out with? Is that someone you'd want to be? Would you trade lives with them? Like, no joke. A lot of the hustlers, even coaches, people I'm even friends with and love, take away all that success, would you trade lives with them? Is it even worth cutting into your own well-being for that? And that goes, again, we're going a little deeper here, but on the spiritual side, are you worshiping the creator of the creation? Are you valuing the thing? Right? If you start cutting into your well-being, not listening to authentic voice, hurting yourself internally, the only way to make sense of life, or if you're someone who's super apathetic, you just live up here, right? Just live in your mind. Most people can't even feel their entire bodies, by the way. It's like, I only live here, just mental. How are you going to make sense of life? You make sense, well, am I winning? Am I doing better than others?
What I like to do is like some of the stuff that you say, I like to have like a whiteboard in my place, and I'll just like write something down that I'll like, some bits of wisdom I'll get from a book. Like one I like is Think and Grow Rich by Julien Blanc.
It's a good first step.
I'll like write it down on a whiteboard, just like when I wake up in the morning, Friday night, I'll look at it. Yeah.
Nice.
Would you recommend that?
It's a good first step. I do like reminders. Yeah. Right. So I will incorporate that, but don't make that your foundation. Right. So again, the idea is like have a whiteboard where you write down motivational things, or even a vision board. I think that's great. Okay. For the longest time too, when I was working on my social skills, right, being more open, learning how to connect with people, talk to people, I would write stuff down on my arm. Right. It's like if I notice like I go out and I'm like super serious, I'd write down smile. And it was just a constant reminder like, hey, oh yeah, smile, 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 smile. Time and awareness. Funny enough, same here. Right? To be everywhere is to be nowhere. Be present, be present, be present. It's good to sprinkle that in, but notice that that's also still fighting the hand, because you're assuming that the default is the opposite. It's the same with people who talk about like self-love practices, right? Or affirmations. It's a good first step, but you're fighting the hand. It's a newbie technique, right? Because who is someone who needs to do self-love? What type of person is that? Yeah, someone who hates themselves. If you hate yourself, you have to do self-love. There needs to be effort put in. Versus, why do I hate myself to begin with? That's the what now versus the why. How do you achieve true self-love? You let go to self-hate. You don't need to do self-love. Right? So same here. It's like same with affirmations, right? You don't need to convince yourself of the opposite. I am awesome, I am awesome, I am awesome. It means that you believe you're not. And then the more you do it, because you're doing it in reaction of I'm not awesome, it reinforces it. The more you battle the hand, the more power you start giving to that hand. But better than nothing. But then eventually you want to reach that point where if you think of like the steak, it's like that's the spice on the steak. Still have it, like training wheels, great. But don't think that's the destination. Think, why am I not naturally drawn towards this? Why don't I just naturally love myself?
To where it's like your default.
Exactly. Yep. You want it to be the foundation. Same with taking action. If you need a self-attack to get yourself to take action, it's saying that by default you don't want to take action. Why? Why is it that by default you don't have your own best interests at heart? By default you're just not naturally inspired to take action. You can also audit waking up in the morning, right? When you wake up in the morning, a lot of people are like, snooze, another day. Why are you resisting life? Right? Assuming you got appropriate sleep. Why isn't it when you wake up in the morning, you're like, yes! Life, another day! Right? You know, guaranteed too, if you knew that was your last day alive, you would not hit snooze. Right? You'd wake up and be like, oh, life. Right? So, audit the advice. It doesn't mean never use it. It has its place. David Goggins has its place. Will I still rely on some David Goggins here and there? Of course. But that's not the destination. That's optimizing one paradigm. And within that paradigm, trust me, back in the day, I got really good at it. I was, no joke, a master at fighting against self-sabotage. That's how I achieved a lot of my early success. Was relying on a lot of misery, a lot of self-hate, a lot of getting myself to take action. Instead of accountability and support being the training wheels, that was the foundation. I just needed it. Couldn't do anything without the accountability. Nothing. I had no authority over myself. I didn't enjoy any of the results, but I was really good at fighting self-sabotage. But eventually, it'll get you. And you can also audit, does the change that has occurred so far, or the results that have occurred so far, do they require a lot of effort to maintain? Is there still the fear of losing them, of falling back? If suddenly you stopped everything, you stopped your little morning routines and affirmations, et cetera, would it fall back? If so, that's anti-self-sabotage. And that's what I always felt, like this force just always pulling me back that I had to battle. The hand just always looming, ready to punch me. I was just always battling it. And then what I found out later is once you withdraw from that, and instead of the whole what now approach, you shift it to the why. Why? Where does it come from? Because you weren't born that way, right? You weren't born punching yourself in the stomach. Something happened. You weren't born thinking that you were so weak. You weren't born procrastinating, right? It's not like you were a baby and you're like, breast milk, yeah, I'm gonna wait. You're right, you're not gonna procrastinate. But something happened. What a graphic, right? If you want more graphic, this is you. It's like you're born, it's like that. Same there, you weren't complaining, right? You weren't all negative, like, oh, that's a little too tight and just, right? No. You also weren't born all stifled and shy, right? You were like, don't look at me, right? It's like, but things happened, right? This is social conditioning. We all know social conditioning at a very surface level, like it's just this vague thing, right? But no, if you actually look at your own conditioning, what happened to you during the process of socialization? Entering this world, what happened? You can also ask yourself, when did I start believing that I might not be good enough? When did that happen? At what point? Can you remember a time before that? At what point do you start procrastinating? At what point do you start stifling yourself? At what point did you start experiencing social anxiety? At what point did you start thinking, maybe success isn't for me? That too, with this whole system, if you think about this win, do you think you deserve it? Does it feel like a someday it'll magically happen? Or can you actually see yourself achieving that? Can you congruently say, I deserve this? Can you allow yourself to achieve it? If you can't, why? Where did it come from? So that whole what now paradigm, it's very appealing. You're punching yourself, you want immediate relief. To identify when the punching started, it's a lot of introspection, seeing a lot of the patterns that run us. This is also why I keep talking about past traumatic experiences, right? Not necessarily traumatic like we think in the mainstream, like it's like war and abuse. Yes, that's traumatic, that's terrible and horrible. But every single one of us have experienced trauma. Trauma simply being a situation that's too overwhelming for us to handle, that threatens our survival. But that depends on someone's perspective, right? As a kid, you might think getting lost in a grocery store, your life's at risk. You might think getting mocked in school, that you're going to be ostracized from society because the classroom's the world for you. Little situations like that, as an adult, we're like, well, it's just kids teasing each other. Not for you as a kid. You might interpret it as, I'm going to die right now. Now, when those situations happen, sure, right? You can suppress, repress the entire situation, but what will tend to happen too is you will disown parts of you that threaten your survival, your existence. If you're loud and people laugh, you're going to take the part of you that is loud, unstifled, and you're going to say, let's never, ever embody that again. If we are loud and unstifled, we might die. That's a belief, a core belief that you formed during your childhood, and then you never examine it. And you're here in your adult life like, why am I stifled? Well, it goes back to that. That's where the work needs to be done. Do that, now you're not stifled anymore. Right? So it's, again, deep, deep introspection, letting go. Where did the punching come from? And then things just get so easy. Taking action shouldn't feel like a lot of effort. If it does, you're always going to be very limited by how much action you can take. It'll also be very demoralizing. Right? If every time you're taking action you feel miserable, no true result can justify that. Right? You're like, at some point, eventually you'll be like, why am I even doing this? Is it worth putting myself in such misery and pain? Even if you do succeed, right? Talking about those successful clients, are these little trinkets worth it? You get bored of them really fast. Right? Everyone thinks, like, when I have all that money, oh boy. No. If any of you have experienced what it's like to buy a new phone, at first you're probably really excited. After a day or two, after a week, yeah, it's gone. It's fleeting. Right? That's worshiping the creation. That doesn't mean don't get a new phone. There's tons of advantages to that. Same with money. It allows you to accomplish more of your goal, whatever that is. But it's a tool. It can't be the goal. If your goal right now is to numb yourself, money will just help you numb yourself. You'll be able to drink fancier booze. Right? So ask yourself, what's my goal? Not money. What will money help me with? Same with people like, I just want a lot of money. More important, ask yourself, how are you going to make that money? You can also audit the escapism culture that we're in. Right? A lot of ads, for example, escape the 9-to-5. No boss. And people fall for that. No. Better question is, what's a 9-to-5 you don't want to escape? Right? Because here's the thing. You escape the 9-to-5, and this is for any of you who's business owner, entrepreneur, you'll resonate. It's like, yeah, sure, quit the 9-to-5 and pick any 18 hours of the day you want instead. right? It's actually a lot more work, a lot more responsibility, a lot more stress. Oftentimes people who kind of venture in this entrepreneurial path, you start missing the 9 to 5. You're like, is this really what I wanted? It was so comfortable back then. I didn't have to think as much. There wasn't as much responsibility and stress. I just want to go back to the comfort zone of the 9 to 5, right? Instead, it's like, what's a job where it doesn't even feel like a 9 to 5? A job where you're not even living for the weekends. A job where you're like, I could just do this forever. That's a better question. Same with no boss. You're always going to have a boss. But what about picking a boss you like? That's what I do, right? With my clients, for example, I don't just take on anyone. I take people who I want to work with because my clients become my boss. What happens, say, with the 50K client if I don't show up for a call? I have a boss. Everyone has a boss. You can't not have a boss. But you can pick bosses. If there's someone where I'm like, oh, this person would be terrible to work with, nope. No money will ever get me to compromise that. Now, if someone just cares about money, they are probably hearing this and like, you are insane, whatever it takes for the money. Well, it depends on your ideal life. My ideal life, my well-being, no. I say no to a lot of people who want to pay a lot, and it's actually shocking to people. I don't even say it publicly because you'd be like, what is he doing? Is he insane? But that's not my ideal life.
What are some of the reasons you say no to people?
If it's someone, like, I will try to help as many people as possible. My time is very limited. If it's someone where they're not open or ready, right? Like there's going to be a lot of pushback, or they're like not going to really apply at all, nope. If it's someone who I really just find annoying and we just don't mesh and I just don't like their personality, immediate no, right? Like it sounds harsh, but it's like, nope, they can find someone else to help them, someone who will resonate with them. But if, yeah, you're very annoying, it's a very draining, leechy vibe, you're not taking action. Like I've kicked off a lot of clients if they don't take action. People who join my mentoring, I tell them that too. Hey, if you slack off on the missions, you're out. It's rarely happened, but it's happened a few times, right? Some of you on the calls, maybe you've seen it. It's like we're on a call, someone's not taking action, and it's not like harsh, immediate. It's like, I'll do what I can, but if they still don't, after a while I'm like, okay, you're out. And literally, if we're on a Zoom call, they just disappear off the Zoom call. Gone. I have no problem doing that. Refunding them, you're out. I don't want it. So anything ultimately where it's like not aligned with me, not aligned with my win, if it's also someone I sense is very toxic, even though they want to learn, if I can't get them out of that toxicity and the advice is just going to help them be more toxic, nope, I don't want any part in that. So this here is something I've done really more so the past few years. In my early days, I was a people pleaser coach. I'm like, anyone, I will help, just anyone. Now I'm a lot more selective. And you should do the same thing with your life. Don't be a people pleaser when it comes to even connecting with people. Don't try to get everyone to like you. You don't want everyone to like you. You don't want to network with everyone, right? Now, in this room here, because this isn't free, the quality of the people here are a lot better than a free event. Any of you who've been to a free event, you'll immediately see the difference in quality. You also see the difference in terms of action. But then there's levels and levels to this. But even within this room, there are some people you're not going to want to be with. Some people who just aren't aligned with your ideal life, even though they might be super successful. There are people who want to network with me who are really successful, but I just don't like their personality at all. Done. Because part of your win isn't just money. It's also who you surround yourself with, who you talk to. Is that how I want to spend my days? And then I always think back too, where imagine you're on your deathbed and you look back and you're playing the movie that is your life. What movie do you want that to be? Your time is literally the most precious thing. Every single one of us is crafting a movie right now in the moment. Right now, all of you have decided that part of your movie is being here at this event listening to me. That's part of your movie. There's not an infinite amount of movie reel. You're going to run out. Do you want to waste it on the wrong people, the wrong things, the wrong clients? No. And then it's also having that abundance mentality where it's like, sure, I'll say no to that, but that frees up spot for people who are ready. That's also why, even with my coaching, for me to be really involved in, at a lower paradigm, this could be really misinterpreted, but for me to be really involved in someone's life, helping them, there needs to be a certain price point. That's a barrier of entry. You need to pay a certain amount. I will not be involved in someone's life if it's a very low amount or free. That sounds harsh. You're like, well, what about helping everyone? I do also want to help everyone. That's also why we do free events, put free videos out there. We try to get this information to as many people as possible. But when it comes to my own self-love and respect, and also my advice not going to waste, I want to make sure that the person is serious. If you're someone who pays a few thousand for a coaching, you're serious. If I actually talk to you, give you honest feedback, follow up with you, answer your questions in detail, give you action steps, I know you're going to take action on it. Imagine you don't pay much or you don't pay at all. How do I know you're going to take action on it? Then it's a waste of my time and a waste of yours. And it's robbing that time and advice from someone who is ready. Same here. The more you involve people in your life you're not meant to be with, you're robbing the opportunity from yourself and someone else you are meant to be with. Yeah.
So similarly to like successful women, there's a lot of people that like consume the content, do the content, don't have any results because
Yeah.
they're doing something wrong. I was wondering because I know some friends that are really into this like kind of inner work stuff, and I'm like, dude, like after a year, I'm like, it's like you've gotten worse.
Mhm.
Like what? How do you avoid losing your friend that way and doing more?
Love it. Constant feedback. Multiple touch points where you get feedback along the way. Otherwise, because that's a huge trap, content and teachings can be misinterpreted and applied the wrong way. Any piece of advice, by the way, any piece, including my seminar bit here, could be used to help you or used to hurt you. Any piece of advice, you can use it to help you or hurt you. Any piece of advice, you can also use it as an excuse. Right? What are some big traps on the inner work side? People use it as an excuse to not take action. They go overboard. They spend their entire day letting go. I'll be talking about that tomorrow when it comes to inner work, right? The common traps, the right way to do it. So definitely show up for tomorrow. But constant feedback is this key. So I'll give you a few little things to look for. This is how I've personally crafted my coaching, but I would filter any coaching any of you decide to join through this. Number one, okay, look for SAS. System, accountability, support. Meaning, this also depends where you're at, right? Again, you might not have the money yet, in which case, do the best you can. But if you do have a certain amount of money, and you're like, you know what? Let's take action. Let's jump in. Let's make it work. Look for a clear system. But then, not just that. For example, a lot of coachings, you'll just get videos, but you will have no opportunity to talk to the person, to ask them questions, and more importantly, to get feedback from them. And that's why, even a digital course, some people will succeed, but a lot will still fail. They'll misinterpret it, they won't apply it, there's not the accountability, there's not the support, there's just the system. A system's better than nothing, but it's not necessarily enough. And if you look back at your life and you're like, man, I've done a lot of programs, but I just keep procrastinating and failing, right? Like the default is when people buy a course, they'll go 25 to 30% and then they'll give up. At first it's exciting, and then 25 to 30% in, it's like, yeah, that's it. And they have all these courses where they've done 25%, 30%, and they're just gathering digital dust on their desktops, right? That's because there's only the system. Then you want the training wheels, accountability, support. So make sure you can speak to the person. You can ask questions. You can get feedback. And feedback's the key. So say we take my mentoring, right? Who has been in the mentoring? I see some faces. Raise your hand. Be proud. Yeah, raise it high, man. Come on. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So a few of you. So this is no joke, like behind the scenes, like me racking my brain where it's like, how do I produce the most results? And also shifting away from people pleaser. So here's the system, right? We'll talk about this a lot more tomorrow too, but if you take, say, you might have seen this, apathy, grief, fear, anger, courage, desire, purpose, love. That's the curriculum, where every single week, it's 8 weeks, right? So 8 weeks total. Every single week is dedicated to one of these levels. Now, this is the system. Okay? Whole system, you go through this. Within that system, the way it works is every week a level unlocks for you. And within a level you get, this is very important too, content, outer work, inner work. If any of you too, by the way, are coaches of your own, apply and pay very close attention when I'm breaking down. Apply this in terms of how you frame whatever coaching you're doing, you will get results. And audit the success of a coaching by the results it produces. So what does this mean? You'll get a content teaching you about every single state, every single level. Then there's outer work, because you want both. Outer work is every single week you'll get your transformational workout schedule for that week. Right? Where it's like, okay, week 1 apathy, here are the missions you have to do, the challenges, the exercises, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to take the outer work. And the inner work. With every single week you get the letting go side of things, a guided meditation linked to that specific state. Okay, these are, interestingly enough, the exact meditations that I personally do, still to this day. I don't do any others, just this. Now, that's the system. What's the accountability and the support? That will be in terms of 2 things. Facebook, well actually 3 things. Money, Zoom. Okay? So, money, this isn't a cheap coaching. This is one where I'm literally involved in your life for 8 weeks straight. I'm on your shoulder, checking up on you, following up on you, answering your questions, making sure you're taking action, making sure you're not misinterpreting the advice for 8 weeks. We get really deep, as personal as you want to get. We have deep conversations. I'm in your life. For that, number 1, I want you to be serious. Barrier of entry, screening process. I want to make sure you're committed. I want to make sure you're open to it. And on my own personal self-respect level, I want to make sure it's worth my time. On your end too, this is big. It can be a little triggering. If you want someone to truly, truly care about you as a coach, make sure you compensate them for their work. Pay a coach little, why would they care? They'll care a bit, but they're not going to go above and beyond. People tend to resist, like, I don't want to pay a lot. It's like, hey, you pay a lot, that's guaranteed that coach is going to be your bitch. For real. You want results, you want me to be your bitch. You want me to truly care. You want to be like, oh shit, you want me to feel so fucking guilty if I don't go above and beyond. That's why you do it. So that's the money side. But then there's the people side too. People side will be with the outer work, every single mission, you have to report back in a private Facebook group with some kind of proof that you did it. And that's where you were saying, it's like, you don't want to look stupid in front of the other clients. You don't want to look stupid in front of me. You can't get away with it. If it's just you on your own with your mind, it's easy to talk yourself out of it, right? It's like, if you do it or not, no one will find out, right? Same if, say you got a trainer and you're doing the exercises and say the session ends and your trainer's like, at home, on your off day, do this other exercise. You're like, You probably don't do it. Because it's just you. It's like, no one will know. There's no consequence if I don't do it. Why would I do it? So you have to report back for everything. And I'm in there. What was that? Oh, I was like, was there a lady speaking over there? It's like, and it sounded like something. All right. I was so confused. Like, okay. Now, when you report back too, I'm in there and my coaches are in there and we're literally tracking every single client. So it's a super small group. Every single client's like, we're tracking. If you skip, if you miss, we check up on you. Hey, what's going on? How can we help? How can we support you? So you really put yourself in that situation where once you're in, you can't fail. You can't slip through the cracks. You can't be lazy on the side. There's the money that holds you accountable too. You pay a considerable sum. Okay. Mentoring here, it's $4K if paid in full. This might sound like a lot. It isn't. This is the cheapest on my end of in-person coaching, direct access to me that I do. As I said, I have 25K, 50K, even more. Now, if you pay 4K for this, are you going to take action?
Yeah.
Are you going to come up with excuses?
No.
Are you going to procrastinate? Say a mission might be a little scary on the outer work side. You have 4K, you have skin in the game. Right? We call this also burning the boats in a way. You can't turn back. You don't do it, you just wasted 4K. That there creates a lot of fire for people. And what I found is that tends to be the point where, again, this is geared more towards, or like, if you're at the bottom, just kind of figuring things out, it's not for you, unless you're super serious, but this is geared really towards people who have a certain amount of success in their life already, right? Like the people in there are the people like I basically talk to even moving forward after that. So, skin in the game, money, Facebook group. You can also ask questions in the Facebook group, and this sits on the feedback and support side of things. Every single question gets an answer. No joke. More often than not, it's even a video answer. And then this is the cool thing. For every single week, there are 2 Zoom calls. And how are these structured? Not chaotic group calls. So it's not like, you know, say it's like us 4 in it, you 4 and me. It's not like, here we are on Zoom, everyone's unmuted, let's talk. It's one-on-ones, but then you get to sit in on everyone else's one-on-one. So there's this cool feature in Zoom where you click on it and it's like raise hand. And you'll see a little emoji hand pop up. So whoever has a question, you'll click on the raise hand and I'll unmute people one by one and then we'll chat. And there's no deadline to these Zoom calls, meaning we'll go until there are no more questions. They usually last like 2-3 hours. It's like long, in depth. And that's what's cool. It's like we get to have a deep talk. Like say you go through the missions. One, I want to see what comes up because all of you are unique. You've all gone through, we talked about your specific process of socialization and conditioning. So as you go through different missions, you're going to discover new things. You might think back to certain situations. Different limiting beliefs might come up. With that info, that's what we talk about. You report back on it so I can read it, and then we talk about it on the call. What came up? What could that mean? Let's dive deeper into it. What are some things that you might have been procrastinating on? How can I help? And then, and that's the big one with your question, what are some things you might have misinterpreted? Because that there's the last thing is once you're in this system, you have no choice but to take action. Right? We call this inevitability thinking. You threw your cap over the fence, you're going to climb that fence. The only thing that can still get in your way is your mind. Your ego seeping in, misinterpreting things, using them to hurt you, using them to stay stuck, using that information to reinforce your comfort zone instead of moving up through the process. And that there is something, the no joke, even sometimes on the last few weeks, I still have to zap out of you. And that's done on the calls. That's done where I see like, oh, you misinterpreted that. Oh, you said that? Nope, that means you're thinking this, which is wrong. Think this way, think this way. So it's like steering your mind back on track. Can't escape. So the constant feedback. You do this, going through this, no choice but to take action. This is a course where, no joke, 500 people plus have gone through up in this point. We've refined it and be very modest. It's at a point now where it's perfected to the max. And here's the other cool thing. This goes against a lot of marketing business, but for me, this is my legacy coaching. When you're done, you go through the 8 weeks. You actually get to keep the content, so it's not like you lose it after. With every Zoom call, there's replays that you can watch. You keep access to those replays. And you get transferred to a graduates Facebook group, which is another private group where everyone who's gone through this before you is in, and everyone who will go through this after you will be in as well. That's the VIP group. You want to find like-minded people who are committed and successful and actually are aware of the right type of inner work. That's where you find them. Those are literally the most high-quality clients of mine, and you have lifetime access in there. I'm still in there, coaches are in there. That's like the long-term thing. Because this here, you're going to have a lot of epiphanies. Think of it as like this deep sweep. Any single one of your sticking points here, you can link it to one of these levels. Any single one. By doing this sweep, we start letting go of the part of the hand that's punching you, say, when it comes to victimhood, when it comes to fear, when it comes to anger. A deep sweep. My goal is at the end, you have epiphanies, you learn a lot, you understand the process, you blast through a lot of resistance, and you know what to do moving forward. It's not a magic pill, though. You're not going to come out of this done. It's like a deep if any of you played an instrument, like a deep lesson. The true results come after this. How this affects your life. And you want to hear something else that's pretty sad? Yes, believe in abundance. Yes, there are an infinite amount of opportunities. But at the same time, there aren't. So you want to stay in that abundant mindset, but also do take in a sense of urgency. Take this. Few people talk about this, but it's true. Say this is your life. Baby you, dead you. Okay? Terrible skeleton head. Say, from the moment you're born, let's just say you had the perfect childhood, the perfect conditioning, 10 out of 10. Your life would look like this. And this is where you die. Okay? But, and this is also important, there's no such thing as staying still. For a lot of people, they might be going down a bit. And they'll go down, up a bit, down a bit, up a bit, down, maybe up, down. It's like a slow up and down of just overall downtrend. Say you're here at this point. Usually it takes some kind of bottom to hit for you to wake up, for there to be the opening where you're like, enough's enough. Say you start there. Will you start moving up? Yes. But your version of moving up will end here. You're too far down to go back up here. So anything above this, you're not getting that back no matter what. Life's not this magic fairy tale where you can then just jump right up there. No. Same with myself. If I started at this top here, I'd be way up here. There are opportunities that are blocked off for me. It's never too late to change. That is true. But some things do get eliminated in life. The longer you wait, the further down you go, the more it gets eliminated. For real. That there's another way people use advice to kind of rationalize, like, I still have a ton of time. It's never too late. There's always another opportunity. Yeah, but don't take them for granted. Okay? And remember, if you're not moving up, you are moving down. You're not staying the same. And in reality, the more you start moving down too, here's the other big challenge, the more you become invested in that, the more your ego hangs onto it, and the harder it is to move out. The more there is to let go. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? It's like the more you've been punching yourself, the more that has been ultimately optimized. Right? So the sooner you stop, the better. The three types of people who do get the most value out of it, who I've seen the most join, is like three archetypes. One is, as I mentioned, you've attained a certain amount of outward success, whether that's financial, social, you name it, and you realized it's not necessarily all it was hyped up to be. You don't necessarily enjoy it. It feels like you're just kind of going around in a circle again. And sure, right? People outside who don't have that success, they might look up to you, but you kind of feel like that bum covered in trinkets. And the other worst part of that, and I've seen this with a lot of clients, is you're that bum covered in trinkets, and because of that, you don't even have the right to complain. Right? Because like, hey, you're at the top. Why are you complaining? You should be happy. It's like looking up to celebrities who are like sad, right? Like Billie Eilish. It's like, don't be sad. It's like, you're famous, you have the money, why are you sad? You don't have the right to be sad. That's what society says, right? So you can't even necessarily complain. People will also try to, get you or get your success. It's like things actually become worse, right? You tend to fantasize over simpler times. But that's a big one. Like a lot of entrepreneurs, also if you've hit a certain amount of, this would be number 2, self-sabotage, and you're someone who's at an intermediate level. Whether it's financial or even social skills. A lot of people, they'll reach this intermediate and they just hit that ceiling where no matter what they do, they can't burst through that next level. And you'll sense you're at that point where you need to look up more and more advanced content, and it just feels like heavier and heavier and heavier, kind of like you're doubling down and nothing's truly changing. That's when, if you think of a certain paradigm, you're right at the peak. You're hitting the ceiling of a paradigm. You're looking for the answers still within that paradigm, when in reality, you got to blast through and destroy the paradigm. That's a huge part. And then the third type of person is someone who is very, you could say, kind of victim, sad, procrastinating. Okay? If you're someone where it's like you've tried a bunch of programs even, you can't get yourself to take action, or you can only do it during the program, but then after the fact, you just kind of fall back down. If you feel like it's too hard, Really, if you're like me when I started out socially, where it's like you're kind of going out, nothing's really happening. You're like, why? Right? Why is it different for me? Why is it so hard for me? That there's a third type of person. If you fall within these archetypes, you'll get a ton of value because that's where this solves that ultimate sticking point.
Like, this program is such a game changer. The way everything's structured and the material, it's been already, even for me, it's just been, I'm noticing a crazy change in the way that my whole life's like playing out.
What you put together is just incredible. There's nothing like that.
I've just jumped like a million levels. It's just been a complete 180 for my experience of existing. That's awesome.
It's just been so huge in terms of so many of the things I'm finally understanding and realizing and epiphanies I'm having.
What you do is a huge inspiration to me, and I think it's one of the most beautiful things you can give to another human in this entire world.
You saved my life, man. I'm telling you, this is real, man.
Sometimes all it takes is just one person who believes in you. Find people who are where you are in life and model them, work with them. I would not be here if I didn't have people who held me accountable.
Wow.
I just felt a click and things are changing.
This program was just top notch.
Seriously, like, this is a masterpiece. This is perfect.
Everything, the way it's set up, the live calls, like all the support from the coaches is incredible.
It's been nuts.
I just had my tears of joy.
This was the best decisions I ever made.
Thank you for creating something wonderful like this.
This program was phenomenal.
This program was amazing.
This program has definitely changed my life.
I know for a fact I'm in the right place.
This is exactly what I was expecting from the program.
It's been spectacular.
I feel really lucky to have found you.
Thank you so much, Julien. It's worth every dollar.